Welcome, my name's Abdul Wahid, and if you're new to the channel, I'm building a 20-foot catamaran sailboat in my garage. And in this video, I show you the planning of the various curves that the inside hull will need to take, and how to plan and arrange the various dimensions of some of the other bulkheads to meet those curves, as well as a couple mistakes and how I fixed them. So let's get started and I'll show you the current progress. For some of the upcoming stringers, they need to have quite a bit more curve to them. So what I did is I took the southern yellow pine and I cut it into about 3/4 inch square pieces. Now these are 12 feet long, and by gluing these together, we can get a very good bend that will hold its shape once they're all glued together. And when I cut these out, there was one piece that was extremely thin and flexible, and I have it right now situated here. And this is not quite long enough to come back to this bulkhead number 4, but that's okay because this part in here doesn't really exist. This is all part of the internal cabin. The curve that I'm really interested in here is from bulkhead 2 up to the bow. So by bending this very flexible batten, and I've just got it propped up here on this roller for now, by bending this, we get a nice curve here at the front. It does droop a little, so what I want to do, this will give me a good idea. So what I want to do is, when I take the measurements, I'm just going to lift it up a little bit to remove that droop. And that will be the measurement of the height here of bulkhead 1. To get the curve of the top, I again just use this very thin and flexible batten, and I want the curve at the cabin top to be mostly flat with just a little bit of a curve, and the majority of the curve will happen here at around bulkhead 2, and we'll go on to the bow of the boat like this. And this will now let me measure the distance from here out to here, and that will then determine the height of this bulkhead number 1. The next measurement was a little bit more difficult because we're dealing with a compound curve already. So, and my battens really only bend in one direction. What I want to measure here is how much this side needs to come up a little bit. So it needs to be raised up a bit. So the way I'm going to do this is just kind of estimate. I first just used a straight stick, some of the some of the southern yellow pine, and took it from this corner to this corner roughly. And what I want to know is how high from this edge in here is this point right here. So the way I did that was a rough measurement using the square and putting it across here and trying to hold it as straight as I can, and measuring how far up this rises, and then taking into account that I need to take the thickness of the stringer into account because the square wasn't sitting directly on this edge, it was up here. So as best I can tell, there is about a 2.5 inch rise from a straight line from here over. So I want this to be curved a bit, so I'm just going to take that 2.5 inches and cut it in half. And I think that should be a fairly good approximation of the curve this way. So that's that's what I'm going to go with. So I'm starting to draw this bulkhead number 1 out on the plywood, and this is the angle or the distance here that I just measured and then cut in half. So this is about 1¼ inches, because I estimated, I thought that there was probably about a 2½ inch rise, so I cut that in half. And then the last measurement to take is what type of angle we want this edge to come in. And for that, I just looked at the plans, the original plans, and it shows that this angle coming in here is identical to the angle coming in here. So because this is going up 1¼ inches, I'm going to measure straight across here and then take this down 1¼ inches also, and that will be the shape of bulkhead number 1. So you might have noticed in these videos that sometimes I use inches and sometimes I use millimeters. I normally prefer to use millimeters, but a couple things. Historically I've used inches, so sometimes that seeps through in my measurements, but other cases, like where I was using the square to measure this distance, it was easiest to measure that in inches instead of millimeters. So that's the units that I used for that. All right, so I'm going to get this last angle marked off and then cut out this bulkhead number 1. When I originally drew out bulkhead number 1, I got to looking at it and I thought, this doesn't really look big enough. It seems like it just looked too narrow, kind of strange. So I went back with the very flexible batten and remeasured that height, and it turns out it was not 270 millimeters, but it was supposed to be 370 millimeters. So I redrew this, redrew the angle here, also continued to bring this in by 1¼ inch, just like down here, and this is now a much wider bulkhead and it looks much more reasonable. So definitely worthwhile to double check measurements and just kind of sit back and look at things before they're cut out, just to make sure that it just seems reasonable. And looking at this one, it just seemed too thin. So I'm glad I went back and double checked that before cutting it. For bulkhead number 5, I need to know the distance up to this corner here. So the main thing that I did is I want to make sure that this distance is less than the distance here on bulkhead number 4 down to the hull side, and I want to make sure that it's greater than the distance on bulkhead 6 from this point down to the hull side. So I put it somewhere in the middle there, and then stretch this very flexible batten across there. I mean, it's sagging a little bit here, but I think that will be okay. It will form a gradual curve down to the end here, so that's what's important. And the plans actually call for bulkhead 5 to be in a similar shape as bulkhead 6, so this 4-sided pointy shape, and I don't think that's actually correct. I think there might be a mistake in the plans. I've been thinking about this a while and I can't see any other way around this, because this is going to form a seating area, and this part of the seating area I think needs to go straight in like this. So this should form a rectangular seating area. This is going to be where the bridge deck is, and this is going to be the outer hull side. So this is going to form a seat like this to be able to sit on. And I just can't see how that could be angled down like that. So I'm going to make this straight across like this, and then come down. And it's not so important here at bulkhead 6, because this is the end of the boat, and there's going to be a beam coming across here anyway. So this extra pointy area is going to get hidden behind that beam, and the seating area is going to come in here anyway, so it's never going to come close to this pointy part sticking out like this. So I think that's a mistake in the plans, and if that was the only mistake, or maybe misleading drawing, then I might think about this some more. But there's some others here, and in particular, if you take a look here at bulkhead number 4, you see how it comes straight across like this. There is no tapering down like you might expect, and that's okay, because this is going to form the beginning of the cabin. And the same here with bulkhead 2. This is going to form the edge, the wall of the cabin. So all of this is actually going to get filled in with more wood here. So tapering this down like this doesn't really have to be done. But if you look at bulkhead number 1, it does taper down. From this corner here, it actually comes down a bit. And from here, it comes up, just like all of these. They come up at the bottom edge. And when I was looking at the drawings, another drawing for bulkhead number 2, I noticed where the reinforcements were. And I saw one drawing in the plans that had reinforcements angled down. So that tells me that, the actual cabin top here, the frame of the cabin top can angle down, even though it doesn't need to at this point. So that means that these bulkheads don't always have to fit their initial shape that they might at first be drawn at in the plans. So because of that, and because I can't see any other way around this, I'm going to modify bulkhead number 5 to come up at an angle and then come straight out here. Bulkhead number 5 is cut and fitted into place, and this is what I meant by trimming this pointy end off so that it comes flat. So I think this will be a better fit. And I discovered another problem. This is something that I'm going to have to fix, and it'll be a little bit difficult to fix for the 3 bulkheads that are already epoxied into place. It'll be a little bit easier for the 2 that are still to be epoxied, not yet epoxied. But I cut this off here, and I've been making these bulkheads come here to leave room for the planking. I completely forgot to leave room for a stringer like we have down here. And I've been trying to think about, well, okay, do we really need a stringer here because this is going to be planked? I think I should go ahead and put a stringer just like is down here. So that means that I'm going to have to notch this out and this little support board here in all these places. Even like here at bulkhead number 4, I'm going to need to cut this out to make room for a stringer just like down here. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and get that fixed. Well, that wasn't so bad. I used this pole saw to be able to cut the notch out of this support board here, and it came out pretty close to the whole bottom here, so I can clean that up maybe with just a little bit of sandpaper, and that should be ready to go. And this is what it looks like with a couple cut off stringer pieces put in the notch. And I want the stringers to line up with this point of the bulkhead, and then this top stringer piece here will get angled down to match the angle of the bulkhead, and that should leave room then for the planking to go on here. So now I'm going to do the same modification to all the other bulkheads. For the notches that need to be cut out in the places where I've already epoxied on the bulkhead, like this is bulkhead number 4, I can use the pole saw to cut down this side, and I even use the pole saw to cut down along the edge of the whole bottom. But to get this part right here, for that I'm using this Dremel, I think it's a Multimax tool, and it's just a vibrating saw blade. It's a little wide in the sense that when I cut, I'll make a tiny little cut into here that I don't really want, but it's a very small cut that can be filled in with epoxy with no problem. Here is bulkhead number 4 with the notch cut out, and a couple pieces trial fit in here. And here's what the notch is. And probably from this side, you can see the extra little cut that I'm talking about right here. So yeah, very minor, and all in all, I think it gives a good cutout for the stringer. So I decided to double check the curve here at the inside hull side, right around the point where the bridge deck will attach, and it's not really much of a curve at all. So I'm using a batten that's a little bit stiffer, and I've put a little bit of weight up there to curve it down a bit, and when I do that, it lifts up off of this bulkhead number 5 just a little bit. And looking at it, I don't see much of a curve down. So what I think I'm going to do is take off a little bit from the top of bulkhead number 6. So bring this angle down a bit and bring that line straight over. That should allow the end here to be able to curve in, and then we should get a nice curve here. So that's what I'm going to do, and try to make this, because I don't really want it to kind of flare up at the end. So I took about 2 inches off of the end of bulkhead 6, and now with this batten it's sitting firmly on bulkhead 5, and there's a little bit of a gap here, which is what I'm looking for, to be able to pull this down to get just an ever so slight bend, and that should give a nice curve to the inside hull at the back of the boat. So that's exactly what I'm looking for. And I took 2 inches off up here, so brought this down by about 2 inches and then drew a straight line and made that cut. So it slightly reduces the angle here of this bulkhead number 6. So I don't have a batten right now long enough to go across the entire length of the boat, but I showed you just now the curve here at the rear of the boat. It's a very gentle curve, and it will come across here almost straight, maybe a tiny bit of a curve out. So it'll look like this. Here's the batten right there. And at the bow of the boat, it's a much sharper curve, but still well within reason to make that type of curve. It'll look just like that. So the way this works is the whole side will come all the way up here to this, and with I'm probably going to take the cedar planking all the way up to here, and then the cabin top area from this point, from this line here, from this point to the roof, to the top, will be plywood on the sides. And the cedar planking only comes all the way up to this point after bulkhead 2 and forward. From bulkhead 2 through what will be bulkhead 3A and 3B and bulkhead 4, and all the way to the end of the boat, the cedar planking will stop here, because this is where the bridge deck will come in. So the bridge deck will come in here. So from about this point up will be the bridge deck, and the bridge deck will stop right here. So this part of the hull will be open from the bridge deck down all the way up here. So this will be not quite standing room area in the hulls, but pretty close to it. And then back here, the cedar planking will again come up to this point, and this is the point where the bridge deck will come across, and then this will form the seating area in this will form the seating area in the cockpit. So that is the plan, and I just wanted to show you the curvature there all across from the bow of the boat all the way to the rear of the boat. So I think I will go ahead and end the video here, and so you can see the updates, because a lot has happened. This episode will be a lot about some planning and some of the dimensions, and calculating all of the stringers and where they're going to go. So this seems like a pretty good update for you to see here at this point. So all right, that will be enough for this video. Bye.